had recipes that made you feel like you knew what you were doing in the kitchen. And they also made other people feel like you knew what you were doing in the kitchen. Well, this video is for you. Sauerkraut. The fear of making your own sauerkraut at home is totally understandable, but I find once you do it once or twice, you just understand it. That's at least my experience. I suggest the first couple times you try to make it at home, you get scientific with it. You measure the cabbage and you measure the salt. And that way you can taste how salty the cabbage needs to be, and then you store that in the memory bank. I no longer need to weigh my cabbage or weigh my salt, I simply taste. But with that being said, the amount of salt you need is about 2% of the weight of the cabbage. So 20 grams of salt per 1 kilogram of cabbage. If you don't have a scale, don't worry. Most of the time, grocery stores weigh your cabbage for you when you're checking out. So look at your receipt and see how much cabbage you're using. And know that 1 heaping tablespoon of salt is about 20 grams of salt. I'm also adding a couple small carrots to this mixture because I find carrot is such a beautiful element to balance out the tangy fermented flavor of the cabbage. It adds a layer of sweetness. We did 2 massages of the sauerkraut. So once when we first added the salt, we allowed it to sit for at least 20 minutes and then massaged it again until we got nice and juicy. We're going to sterilize our jar and then start packing our sauerkraut in it. You can either use a tamp, a spatula, a blender tamp, something to get inside of the jar and really push that cabbage down. Or for me, my hand fits in the top of a 1 liter jar, so I typically use my hand to do this. I just find it so much easier. I saved and washed 1 cabbage leaf, and then I'm just packing it on top of the sauerkraut to make sure that no cabbage pieces are being exposed and everything is submerged in the cabbage juice. Another note is you want to leave space at the top of your jar for the fermentation to have room to breathe and to go, and so that way your jar does not explode. The fermentation will take anywhere from 2 to 7 plus days. Usually on day 3 to 4, I put mine in the fridge. And you will need to burp your jars, which simply just means opening the jar lid slightly and allowing the gases to release and then closing it back up again. Pickled carrots. Pickled red onions. Pickled things is one of the easiest things that you can do in your kitchen, and it just saves so much money than buying it at the grocery stores or at farmers markets, and it's just so simple, and you can experiment with different spices and things. And pickled carrots is such a beautiful thing to add on top of Buddha bowls, add in sandwiches. It just adds such a nice layer of color and yumminess to meals. So I ribboned a bunch of carrots. I'm making 1 liter jar of pickled carrots, so I stuff them in there. I'm doing the pickling all at the same time, so I'm cutting my red onion into half moons, shoving that into a jar, and then making the vinegar mixture for both things. I'm doing 1 liter of vinegar into a pot, 2 tablespoons worth of sugar, and a half a tablespoon worth of salt. Adding that onto the stove until it comes to a nice little simmer, and in the meantime spicing up my individual jars. You can 100% add the spices to the vinegar mixture if you're only doing 1 or you want them to taste the same. For the carrots, I used more warming spices, and then for the red onion, I simply just like adding a little bit of chili to it, and then I'm just gonna shove everything in there, release any air bubbles that are in the jars, and then close them up, let them sit on the counter for 2 days at room temperature, and then pop them in the fridge. You can eat them pretty well immediately, but I find the best flavor is after about 12 hours. And they keep for so very long in the fridge. As long as they look fine, smell fine, and taste fine, then they're probably fine. Lemon tahini dressing. Okay, hear me out. If you have a bottle of homemade salad dressing inside of your fridge, people are gonna think you know what you're doing. First things first, we got some garlic into a low heat pot with a good amount of oil. Please do not burn your garlic. Don't even really brown the garlic. We're just trying to take that intense, fresh garlic flavor away from it and add a little more toasty garlic flavor to it. We're getting lemon juice, tahini, and water to the right consistency. You can make it thinner, you can make it thicker, it's really up to you. A couple tablespoons worth of sugar, salt to taste. Everyone likes things slightly saltier or slightly less salty, so please just taste as you go. Dijon mustard. Obviously added our garlic in there as well, and then added a little bit of chili. That is totally optional, however. I've added mine into an old tamari bottle. If you have an old salad dressing bottle or a jar that you want to put it in, amazing. And it lasts for 2 to 3 weeks in the fridge. If you have extra, then make yourself a little kale salad like I did. But before we continue, I'd like to say a big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. I'd like to introduce you to Design Intelligence. They combine 2 decades worth of industry-leading design expertise and cutting-edge AI technology to unlock your strongest creative potential. You literally go into Squarespace, you say, make it with AI, and then you just click a few buttons and it creates a beautiful website for you. Customize it, of course, and then on the back end, create your invoicing, upload your digital courses or products, and then launch your website. It's that easy using Squarespace. One of the things that I love about Squarespace is the fact that I can, in just a few clicks, receive my payments. Plus, Squarespace manages it all for me. They've got Apple Pay, they've got Afterpay for my customers. They know how to do it right. If you'd like to try out Squarespace, then head to squarespace.com for a free trial. Yes, play with all of these tools, build an amazing website, and when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/JuliaAyres to get 10% off of your first purchase of a domain or website. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video.
Apple chutney.
Ooh, guys, this one is so delicious and it's just low and slow. Yes, there's some chopping, but once it's in the pot on low heat, it's just time. So we got half of a cooking onion into a pot. We're now coring and cutting 4 small to medium-sized red apples. You can do green apples if you want a little bit more of a tart chutney. The sweeter the apple, obviously, the sweeter the chutney will be. And we're gonna chop them as small as possible just to reduce the cook time as well. I simply just set that aside. It is not going yet on the stove. And I got chopping a bunch of garlic and some ginger as well. 5 cloves of garlic and a good chunk, about an inch worth of fresh ginger. First things first, we got our onion on low heat, allowed it to soften, and then added our ginger and garlic along with all of our spices. They will be listed down in the description box, so do not worry. We're going to allow our spices to warm up and become very fragrant, again on low heat for a couple minutes before adding our apples. Mixing that all together, I had some leftover vinegar mixture, so I decided to add that, but you're gonna add a half a cup of vinegar, a couple tablespoons worth of sugar. Feel free to add a little bit more if you desire. Simply give it a taste, see how you like it. And to thin it out a touch, you can add anywhere from half of a cup to an entire cup of water.
Chili jam.
Oof, the first time I bought chili jam, I was in love with it. I ate way too much in a short period of time, and now I realize it's super easy to make at home as well. All you need is sugar and some acidity. I decided to try this out with lemon juice. You do not have to juice lemons. You can 100% just use white vinegar, and that's what most recipes call for. On low heat, we're allowing the sugar to melt, so that way there's no gradient to it left, and then we're gonna add our chilies. I'm adding 8 to 10 small-ish red chilies. I just decided to break them apart with my fingers, but you can throw them in a mortar and pestle, or if you already have ground chilies, then it's about anywhere from 3 to 4 tablespoons. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's also a lot of sugar that we're adding, and we want the chili jam to be full-bodied and flavored. You can add garlic, you could add ginger even, but I just kept this super simple with the chili, lemon, and sugar, and a good splash of water as well. Shove it in a jar and leave it out at room temperature.
Kitchari. This one's a little bit random, not gonna lie. I was just meal prepping it today and thought I'd just throw it in the video too. It's quite yummy.
This one is such a delicious and simple go-to meal prep for you. I absolutely loved this week, so I got started by rinsing brown rice and lentils in a bowl and then allowed them to soak for a couple hours. In the meantime, prepping a bunch of vegetables, chopping my carrot. I added 2 small to medium-sized carrots to this recipe and then decided to get creative with some leftover kale stalks. We tend to just throw kale stalks away, which is totally valid, but at the same time, they are edible. You can use them in dishes, so throwing them into this dish allows them to be used up without an intense flavor coming from them. Also did half of a cooking onion. We started off by adding the onion and the carrot to the pot, allowed them to get slightly soft and translucent, followed by our ginger and our kale stalks, and then all of our spices. Again, they will be written down in the description box like every single one of the recipes here, along with the instruction manual as well. We got the spices nice and warmed up and then also fried the lentil and brown rice for a couple minutes with everything to just infuse the flavors into them, and then added our water, stirring occasionally until everything's cooked. I decided to top mine with my pickled red onions and a little cilantro for that pop of green color, and it can be enjoyed throughout the week for lunch, dinner, or a simple snack.